Hey there, welcome into the College Basketball Bracket Science YouTube channel and podcast network, your encyclopedia to the college basketball season and beyond. It is Thursday, June 4th. I am Brandon Jadich, the host of Bracket Science, and we have a fun rankings episode for you today. It's going to be the way too early rankings, the June edition. So I'm going to try and do these once a month, just kind of refresh everyone's memories of who some of the top teams might be going into next season. But what we're going to do is, we're going to talk about 45 teams. However, the top 25 is what everyone usually really cares about. So I'm going to talk about those top 25 teams according to my rankings and talk about the potential rosters they have going forward. I'll get my outlooks on the teams. Obviously, it will change a little bit from month to month, just with, waiver stuff going through. Rosters are still, people are signing some players still, not a ton. And then just, changing of opinion is definitely a thing, as it's June and the college basketball season doesn't start till November. So I did try and dive deep into some of these rosters, what some of their strengths and weaknesses might be. So I'm going to talk about all of those today, but I am going to try and do this pretty much once a month. Alrighty, before diving into it, just be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Hit the hype button on YouTube as well. You can also check us out on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Bracket Science with 2 S's. Be sure to check out our website for transfer portal stuff, coaching carousel stuff, bracketscience.org. The link is also down below in the description. Alrighty, so our number one team is going to be our stat of the day. For those who are new here, we do a stat of the day every single day as we are Bracket Science. We deal with a lot of numbers. Our stat of the day today is, so without further ado, basically our number one overall team, no surprise, is going to be Florida going into next season. So I want you to look at just the outlier on their CBB Analytics team sheet here. It's obviously that 3-point percentage, 31.2% from three. That was the big concern going into last season. The guard play, the shooting, it continued to be a concern. Florida was not a slouch last year. They were a 1 seed, dominated the SEC. Really, really good team. Got upset in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Still a really good year. However, if you see that number next to it, that 14, that is the percentile. So they were in the 14th percentile in all of college basketball in 3-point shooting last year. That's going to have to improve this year. It might be a little bit of a continued theme. So that's what we're going to talk about. We know their front court last year was dominant. It's going to be just as dominant this year because they didn't lose pretty much anybody. So, Florida's in really good shape as it stands right now. But this is going to be the main concern. So let's just, before diving into it, I just got to shout out CBB Analytics. Be sure to sign up with code SCIENCE at cbbanalytics.com for $30 off a pro subscription. It's the best place for college basketball fans, coaches, players, analytics. It breaks it down into percentiles like we talked about, does a bunch of stuff in the transfer portal. It has everything you need. It might be a little bit overwhelming at first, but you can spend hours upon hours on CBB Analytics just finding all sorts of fun stuff, all sorts of fun analytics and stuff you need to know for your team next season. So be sure to sign up with code SCIENCE for $30 off a pro subscription. Alrighty, I will now bring up the graphic of the official rankings. I am going to break it down with banners. So if you're looking for just one specific team, my outlook on, say, Kentucky or something, you can fast forward on that banner, as you can see on the bottom left side of the screen, for those watching on YouTube to find Kentucky or some other team that you're looking for. All right, so let's dive into a little bit of the roster breakdown. So Florida, I'd be very shocked if they're not the preseason number one team. The big thing is going to be Denzel Aberdeen waiting for his NCAA waiver. This seems, from everything I've heard, seems like 50-50 whether he's going to get it or not. So he played like 12 games his freshman year, but he played at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season with a big gap in the middle. So it seems like Florida is very optimistic that he's going to get his waiver. However, it seems like a lot of people in the media are like, well, I don't think he's going to get his waiver. So it seems it could go either way. He's obviously a very important piece, but their projected starting lineup would be Boogie Flan back for another season. He really made a big jump at the end of last season, especially just on the defensive side. He picked it up on the offensive end, but he is a tremendous on-ball defender as a guard. Aberdeen, if he is able to get this waiver, will be their 2 guard and will have a lot of responsibility next season. And then the front court of Tommy Houck, Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu, all back from last season. Ruben Chinyelu, the defensive player of the year in all of college basketball last season. That is as good as it gets. That is why they will be number one in pretty much every ranking you see, because of the Houck, Condon, Chinyelu, from a team that, these 3 guys obviously won a national championship 2 years ago, were a 1 seed last year. And, the big fault of, it wasn't like, I don't mean to just point out just one guy as the fault. And he got better at the end, but Xavier Lee was, I think, a net negative. He had his moments last year, but it was just stepping into the shoes of Walter Clayton, and, Will Richard it just didn't work. And that's big shoes to step into. but he was making a ton of money and it just didn't quite click as well as we might have thought. He wasn't bad towards the end of the stretch. I don't mean to just, beat down on him, but Aberdeen would definitely be an upgrade at that position if Aberdeen is able to play. Other options that they're going to have, this is also an incredibly deep team. Urban Kloppsjar is also back. If Aberdeen does not get his waiver, I would expect Kloppsjar to enter the starting lineup, a year or two in the Florida system. Great shooter, should make a big jump. I think a lot of people are also really, really optimistic that there's going to be a big jump between one of these three players, CJ Ingram, AJ Brown, or Isaiah Brown. They have three options of guys that could make huge jumps. AJ Brown was formerly at Ohio. He redshirted last year. We kind of talked about him a lot last year. I'm like, I really felt like they could have used him last year, but obviously they saw something. I don't know if there was an injury or what was going on behind the scenes. But one of these guys, if Aberdeen does not get this waiver, is really, really going to be forced into a huge role. The guard play, or we know the front court play is going to be awesome. The guard play is going to be the big thing about, will this team just dominate the entire year next year and have one of the, be a lock as a one seed? No matter what, this team's floor is going to be about as high of a team as I can remember in a really long time, just with that awesome front court, with the depth and experience that they have. So yeah, they're going to be awesome. Yet again, Todd Golden done a really, really good job, obviously, at Florida. Now, if Aberdeen doesn't get this waiver approved, I think there's one other team that you can probably consider for preseason number one. And if you want to throw someone like a Michigan, just because they won the title last year and they're going to be probably preseason top 5 again, you want to put them at number one, I fully respect that. I think your other best roster to put together as the preseason number one would be Duke. I have Duke at number 2 right now. So their big transfer coming in is going to be John Blackwell from Wisconsin. John Blackwell, an elite scorer. I'm really, really curious to see how John Blackwell fits into the system, though, for Shire. But Shire has maybe the best roster in college basketball. Again, them or Florida. Caleb Foster is going to be back for another season, as is Caden Boozer. Caden Boozer will probably be coming off the bench, I would think. Dame Sarr is also back for another year. Patrick Gamba is going to be one of the best players in college basketball next year, one of the best defenders, one of the best big men in the country. And then 5-star forward Cam Williams, who I've become a very, very big fan of in terms of his game. I think he's going to be awesome at Duke next season. Duke has, had the previous 2 players of the year with Cam Boozer and with Cooper Flagg. Cam Williams is going to be another awesome freshman coming in. However, I think the majority of the public would say that John Blackwell is probably going to be their best player next year, but you never know. Sometimes these transfers work, sometimes they don't. Look at AJ Storr going to Kansas a couple years ago. Everyone thought that was going to be perfect. Funny enough, that was also from Wisconsin to a blue blood program. Same goes for John Blackwell to Duke. I think more people would be more optimistic about John Blackwell going to Duke just because John Blackwell has a couple years of being awesome. This team's going to be really, really good. They are also deep. They got Bryson Howard coming off the bench. We already mentioned Caden Boozer. Deron Rippey, who is a other very highly thought of freshman coming in. Drew Sharnowski, the transfer from Belmont. So they got 9 players at least that are like, yeah, they can all play for this Duke team and they're going to be deep. They're going to be fast. They're going to be lengthy. I think this team's going to be awesome. Can John Shire get them over the hump that they've kind of gotten stuck on the past 2 seasons? I think it's debatable that they could have had the 2 best teams the past 2 seasons. I kind of thought Michigan was always the best team last year, Michigan and Arizona, but then Duke beat Michigan last season to get that number 1 overall seed. So Duke was very deserving of that number 1 overall seed. They lost in the Elite 8. It's not like they had a failure of a year. They had a good year. The year before that, they were by far the best team at KenPom all season long, and then, got beat on that kind of collapse against Houston. So Shire's got to get him over the hump. Shire has not gotten to the national championship game yet. I think this is one of his better opportunities to do so. All right, at number 3, I got Illinois. So Illinois is going to return kind of similarly to Florida, a really, really good front court with David Mirkovic, Zvonimir Ivisic, and his brother Tomislav Ivisic. They also bring back Andres Stojakovic, who kind of made even a bigger name for himself in the NBA draft combine. It was kind of one of those where it's like he's never going to go to the NBA draft, but he's just testing the waters. He did really good. He performed really, really well. And then they do bring in transfer Stefan Vox from Providence. This team is going to be very, very similar to last year's team. I know that should seem fairly obvious because they're returning a bunch of players, but replacing Keaton Wagler with Stefan Vox, I think it's a pretty good job. Stefan Vox is a tremendous offensive player, not a very good defensive player at all, really. But that was the big concern for Illinois last season. They They had the best offense in the entire country, but the defense was a little bit questionable at times. It wasn't an awful defense. I think they ended up top 30 in the country in defense. It's going to be kind of the same story this year. They also do have Jake Davis coming back, one of the better glue guys in the country. He'll come off the bench. The depth isn't quite as great as Duke's or Florida's. However, the starting five can compete with just about anyone. Coming off a Final Four last season, a top five Ken Palm team, did they end up? So really, really good year. Brad Brownell's built up a really tremendous program there. Alrighty, let's move on. I swear I'll try and get through these ones a little bit quicker. I just want to give, probably like the top 10 some love, and then we'll go through a little quicker, just kind of do some labeling of some of the rosters to look out for. Michigan up next. So Michigan, the defending national champions. I got them at number 4 in the country. Elliot Cadeau is back for another year. Trey McKinney is back for another year. I think Trey McKinney is going to be a first-team All-Big Ten player this year. I think he is going to pop off. Brandon McCoy, the 5-star freshman coming in. Dusty May's first, really, I guess Trey McKinney was very impactful last season. I guess I shouldn't say that. So we'll say second, really, really impactful freshman that's coming in for the Dusty May era at Michigan. JP Estrella transfers in from Tennessee, and Mustafa Cham transfers in from Cincinnati. So the front court of Estrella, Cham is going to replace the likes of Yaxel, Ademara, and Morez Johnson. It's probably a little bit of a downgrade because pretty much anyone would be a downgrade from what those were last season, as great as that front court was. They're going to have at least probably 2 lottery picks between Yax and Ademara, and Morez Johnson is supposed to go in the first round as well. So it's going to be hard to replace that, but I think he did a decent job. I loved Mustafa Cham last season at Cincinnati. I thought he really, really made some really kind of turned Cincinnati's season around last year whenever Cincinnati started playing really well late in the year. Thought that was heavily reliant on Mustafa Cham. So I'm curious to see how he fits in at Dusty May's system, who has obviously just produced great big after great big. JP Estrella has been a good player for a couple seasons now. So I like the starting five. We'll see. Jalen Reed also transferred in from LSU. He'll be coming off the bench, I would expect. We'll see if LJ Kaysen is when he's able to return. He'll also be there, so they got depth. It's a really, really good team. Dusty May's a really, really good coach. I like to see some of these, like you got Duke, who's been one of the best programs in the country, forever, obviously, since Coach K took over, but over the past couple seasons done really, really good things. Florida, a national championship winner. Michigan, a national championship winner. And obviously UConn, also a national championship winner a couple times, and reached the national championship game last year. So some of these really, really big programs in the top 5 going forward to next year, it's going to set up for a really fun season, in my opinion. So at number 5, I do have UConn and Dan Hurley. They returned Silas Demery Jr., who will probably be the Big East preseason player of the year, I would think. Maybe one of the St. John's guys who we'll talk about here in a little bit, but I would think it would be Demery. Braylon Mullins is also coming back. That's the beauty of the NIL era. Braylon Mullins, a couple years ago, would have been gone to the NBA. He is back for another season. Jaden Ross is also back. Then they get transferred Nick Kamenia from Duke. Really, really good shooter. Had some moments last year at the beginning of the year, kind of, faded off a little bit towards the end of the year, but he should fit in really well. Him and Mullins is just going to be a dynamic, just shooting duo. Then Najee Hines, the transfer in from Seton Hall, the big man. Solo Ball was announced that he is going to be out for the entire season next year with his wrist injury. So that's a little bit of a blow. However, I don't think it's as big of a blow as some might think. And will definitely, it hurts. It's going to hurt the depth a little bit, but they've got some pieces coming off the bench. Junior County's coming in. It's Dan Hurley, and he's got a great starting 5. I'm expecting this team to be awesome yet again. It seems like it's going to be a 2-headed race in the Big East yet again. All right, let's move on and talk about Arizona, who I have at number 6. Arizona under Tommy Lloyd is just, I think last year was just really the turning point. They've been really good the past couple of years. They were, made the Sweet 16 a couple of years ago. They've been good under Tommy Lloyd, but last year they turned the corner by making the Final Four. I think this momentum is going to continue. Derek Dixon transfers in from North Carolina. Caleb Holt, who outside of Tyron Stokes, I think is the best freshman in the entire country. Really, really good scoring guard. Ivan Karchenkov is back, will be first team all defense next season. Absolutely. Cameron Holmes coming in, also the freshman, and then Mo Krivas back for another year. Mo Krivas is going to be awesome yet again. One of the most underrated players in the entire country. JJ Maniquit also transferred in. We'll see what the depth looks like. We'll see if Bryce James is able to get in. But Arizona is going to be really, really good yet again. I have them as the top-ranked team in the Big 12 yet again going into next season. All right, at number 7, Michigan State. I'm really, really curious about Michigan State. I feel like not a ton of people have been talking about Michigan State this offseason, which is kind of strange to me because I think this is a national championship contender. And here's what I'll say about Michigan State. Every year I rank Michigan State really high in the preseason. They don't play that well. They always end up like what was that a couple of years ago? Were they preseason top 5 and then they lost to James Madison? Remember that season? I think they ended up maybe a 7 seed or something. And then the past couple seasons, it's like, yeah, I don't really see all the talent upside. And then they end up being like a 2 seed, or last year they were a 3 seed. They've been really, really good. Tom Izzo's kind of turned a corner, but this year, man, I love this roster. Just Jeremy Fears coming back. I don't know if this is like a bold take or not because I've been seeing a lot of people, not a ton of people talking about Jeremy Fears this offseason. I think he's got a chance to be like player of the year next season. As good as he was this past season, leading the country in assists, a lot of people going into last season were talking about Braden Smith as the best, kind of the best candidate to win National Player of the Year. It seems like it's just getting more and more difficult for these guards to get that job done. And Braden Smith was really, really good. I thought Jeremy Fears was on the exact same level. Fears led the country in assists, and he's coming back for another year. So I'm kind of, it seems kind of strange to me that not a ton of people, at least from what I've seen, are talking about him as maybe a potential player of the year next year. Kerr Tang is also back for another season. Cohen Carr is back and going to have some really, really fun highlights. As long as we can keep Cohen Carr in college basketball, I'm going to love it because it's so fun to watch. Cam Ward, who had really, really good signs last year as a freshman, coming back for another year, he's going to be awesome. And then the transfer Anton Bonk from Charlotte coming in, I like it. A huge guy. A ton of people really wanted Anton Bonk, and I think this is a absolutely perfect fit. As Michigan State did lose Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper, who were really, really good last year, but Cam Ward's going to fill in nice. I think Bonk is, as long as he's able to transfer up, just from what I've seen, I know he's transferring up a level. He's been good. I think it's going to fit in really well. I love the starting 5. They also have depth. They got Jordan Scott back again. They got Jesse McCullough coming off the bench. I think this team's going to be awesome. I think they're going to compete atop the Big Ten. The Big Ten's going to be awesome with them, Michigan and Illinois this year. There's even a couple more teams that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, I like what I'm seeing from this Michigan State team, and Tom Izzo just does it. I think this is going to be the year that Michigan State, maybe they'll get, I can't remember who they play in the Champions Classic. I think they play Duke this year in the Champions Classic. Am I wrong? Am I messing that up? I think Kansas and Kentucky, and then Michigan State Duke is this year. So we'll see how they can do in that opening stretch of the season. All right, at number 8, I have Texas. This might be a little higher than some. I know they've gotten a lot of hype, obviously, this offseason, just with the roster they put together, a very, very expensive roster. I'm even a little bit more optimistic than most. Austin Gooseby is going to be the freshman coming in who should play a very, very big role. Isaiah Johnson, the transfer from Colorado, who a ton of people really love this transfer. This one's just kind of like, yeah, it's good. It's not like my favorite transfer. I'll tell you my favorite transfer on this team. Elijah Freeman, the transfer from Auburn, also coming in. He got a lot of hype last year from transferring up to Auburn. Just as Auburn's story was last year, just wasn't awesome. So Elijah Freeman, I think this is going to be a good year for him. David Punch, this is maybe my favorite transfer of the year. I know, like, in terms of just fit, I think this is going to be perfect for this Texas roster and for Sean Miller, for David Punch to fill in at this 4 spot, to kind of go and be just a 2-headed monster with Vokia Titus. Vokia Titus was the reason that Texas really took off at the end of the season last year, went from the first 4 to the Sweet 16. Now, I'm not going to act like Texas was awesome all year last year. They weren't. They were a first 4 team, but you really saw them turn a quarter once Vokia Titus really popped off. And David Punch was the reason that TCU really popped off last season and, ended up beating Ohio State in that first game of the NCAA tournament. So that Punch and Vokia Titus, that's one of my favorite front courts in the entire country. And they got scoring guards as well with Gooseby, Isaiah Johnson. Elijah Freeman can score. And not even to mention, they also have Mikey Lewis coming off the bench, who was awesome last season. Mikey Lewis, the transfer from St. Mary's. Bo Ogden, another really highly thought of freshman. This roster's awesome. I slid him into that 8 spot. I do have a little bit of a gap from like the top 7 to Texas and then St. John's, who we'll talk about next, in my opinion. However, I love this roster. I think this is going to be a really, really good team next year. We'll see if Sean Miller can put all the pieces together, though. That's the only thing, is this is a lot of transfers coming in, but That's college basketball now. All right, at number 9, St. John's. Big jump for me. I did not like this roster until they got Quinn Ellis, Tunde Yesufu, Donnie Freeman really made some noise late. So those are 3 of your starters. Quinn Ellis, who is he's going to get on some people's radars this year. He's very highly thought of in the the foreign landscape. He's going to come into college basketball with high expectations from St. John's fans. However, a lot of casual fans won't know the name Quinn Ellis, but just kind of watch out for Quinn Ellis. However, I will say, like, the big one who for last season, who was like, this is going to be the foreign guy that comes in, was Omar Meyer from Purdue. And if you actually see, I don't even have Purdue in my top 25. I got them at 29. So we'll talk about Omar Meyer just a little bit, but he was the one coming in last year, and he just wasn't really all that great. But we'll see if Quinn Ellis is able to do that. I trust Rick Pitino with a great point guard, especially from the foreign landscape. I think this is going to work out well. They do bring back Ian Jackson, who was kind of poised for a breakout season last year. Was good, not great. We'll see if he can make that big jump this year. And then Tunde Yesufu is the big one coming in, the transfer from Baylor. I am so curious to see how this one works out, because he was awesome last year. Tunde Yesufu was really, really good just on a bad Baylor team. Donnie Freeman, one of the more talented big men in the entire country. The only question is his motor. And you know what I love about Donnie Freeman's choice to go play for St. John's? If there's going to be a guy that's going to bring the best out of you and make you work hard, maybe to the point where you hate him, but as much as you might hate him, it's going to make you better. It's going to be Rick Pitino, and Donnie Freeman choosing to go do that with Rick Pitino to get you to play hard. I think that shows a lot about him and what he wants to be. I really, really like that. And then Ruben Prey rounding out the starting 5. With Ruben Prey really, what game was it last year? Was it in the game against Kansas in the round of 32 where he knocked down a bunch of threes, just kind of popped up out of nowhere? I think that was the game against Kansas. So he should be poised for another big year. The depth is a little bit iffy. That's why you'll see them as more of, probably like the 8 to 15 range, depending on what we see in the AP poll next year. But I like this roster a lot. I think they have a ton of upside. They do have Leotopoulos still coming off the bench. He's played some minutes here in the past. If they can get, 2 and 8 man rotation somehow, this team could be really, really good. St. John's versus UConn in the Big East, going to be a lot of fun, as we've seen the past couple seasons yet again. All right, number 10, rounding out the top 10, I got Tennessee. Tennessee lost a ton, and then they just do it again. My goodness, Rick Barnes. There were questions going into this offseason if Rick Barnes was going to retire. He doesn't do that. He gets obviously a ton of money from the boosters at Tennessee, and he puts together a really, really good roster. So credit to Rick Barnes here. Terrence Hill Jr., the transfer in from VCU, should make this. What's the best way to put this? I don't know. I really like Terrence Hill Jr. He was a 6-man last year at VCU. I think he's going to be kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? Just the sort of game changer, like, not glue guy, but I don't know what I'm looking for here. I'll move on. Terrence Hill Jr. should be really, really good. Day Ames transfers in as well. Really, really good defender. Should fit perfectly with the Tennessee Tennessee Rick Barnes coach team. Juke Harris, the most expensive player added. The transfer from Wake Forest was very highly thought of. A lot of people thought he might go to the NBA draft. He didn't end up going to the NBA draft. Came back to Tennessee, one of the higher paid players in college basketball. Should make a big impact next year. Will probably be their leading scorer, I would think. Him and Terrence Hill Jr., really, really good backcourt. Jalen Harrelson, the transfer from Notre Dame. He'll be a sophomore this year. Didn't get a lot of love last year because he was at Notre Dame, a team that wasn't very good. However, he's got some skill, had a good year as a freshman. And then Miles Rubin, the transfer from Loyola Chicago, to round out the starting 5. So what do you notice about this starting 5? And I'll lean into their 6-man as well. Tyler Lundblade, who is probably the second best shooter in the transfer portal behind Milan Momcilovic, coming into I don't think he'll start. I think he'll probably be the 6-man and just be that knockdown shooter. So that's 6 guys right there. All 6 guys, like their 6 most important guys, are all transfers. So how will that fit together? They obviously lost a ton last year. They lost Nate Ament, Akpara, Gillespie, Cade Phillips, Bishop Oswald, Jalen Carey, JP Estrella, Amari Evans. Pretty much everyone that mattered on that Tennessee team, which is kind of why I think that Tennessee fans might have thought this might be the end for Rick Barnes. It's a complete rebuild. Did a really good job in the transfer portal. This team has a ton of talent. We'll just see if it meshes early enough, or will it be like a team where, hey, sort of like a Texas was last year, where they really pop off late in the year because of a bunch of new pieces. All right, up next, number 11, I got Houston. So Houston has finished. They're in the top 5 every single year at KenPom. Actually, I think, was it 3 or 4 years in a row they finished number 2 at KenPom? That streak was broken last year because they finished fourth. Was it fourth or fifth? Either way, that was like a bad year, finishing fourth or fifth at Ken Palm, and they end up. This program is awesome. So I was putting these together, these rosters, and I'm like, Houston at 11. I'm like, this feels kind of high for what the roster is. However, I'm like, this feels kind of low just for where we know Houston's going to end up. They've just been awesome every single year, no matter what turnover they get. They are bringing back JoJo Tugler, who will be an all defensive team player this year. Chase McCarty and Mercy Miller are also back. They're going to have to make big jumps. I think Mercy Miller is going to make a huge jump this year. Then they bring in Deaton Thomas from LSU. He's dealt with some injuries, but a really, really talented player. I think he's going to fit really well into this Houston roster. And then Arafan Dion is the freshman coming in. He's like 7'1", like 300 pounds, just a massive, massive human being. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch with him and Tugler down low. So I'm really, really curious about this Houston team this year and how it's going to work out. They also have Delreco Gillespie coming off the bench from the transfer from Kent State. He's around my area, so I've watched him play quite a few times. Really, really good player. We'll see how he transfers up to Houston, the hardest working team in the country, it seems, every year. Same goes for Corey Hadnot, transferring from the Horizon League in Purdue Fort Wayne. Really, really good scorer. What I heard, he's been tearing it up at Houston practices from right now. So we'll see if he's really able to step in and make a huge impact on the scoring side for this Houston team next season. Alrighty, up next, let's go to Alabama. So I'm going to be a little bit higher on Alabama than I think a lot of other people might be. I think this team's going to be good. I know there's a little bit of concerns with the front court, but I think this team's deep, and they're bringing back Aiden Holloway, which I don't know how Alabama fans really feel about Aiden Holloway. Like, he just, he got arrested last year, wasn't able to play in the NCAA tournament, but he is a really, really good basketball player. He's going to fill in. It's went from Mark Sears to LeBaron Philon without really taking much of a hit. I think it's going to go from LeBaron Philon to Aiden Holloway as leading the charge without taking too much of a hit. Not to say Mark Sears and Aiden Holloway weren't awesome. They both were. Obviously, LeBaron Philon. I say LeBaron Philon's going to be a lottery pick, but Aiden Holloway is a very, very respectable player as well. Amari Allen is back. He is not going to the NBA draft. He is going to be a huge breakout player next year. The guard play of Holloway and Amari Allen is going to be awesome. They also bring back London Jemison. Drew Fielder transfers in from Boise State. Boise State was up and down last year, but I like Drew Fielder a lot. I think he's going to fit in well at the forward position. And then Brandon Garrison, the transfer who's kind of been all over the place, is also coming in. I think this works out well. I know the big concern is going to be the front court with Fielder, with Garrison, then Caton Briscoe coming off the bench. I loved Caton Briscoe for a second last year. Like, as soon as he got back from injury, I'm like, man, this might be the guy who elevates their ceiling a little bit. Kind of faded off a little bit. However, I think with some internal development with Bristow, with Brandon Garrison, who is a respectable player. I know he's got some motive issues, definitely, like we saw at Kentucky last year. Drew Fielder, Jemison, they have options. However, this is never going to be a front court heavy team. The floor is so high because of how fast they play. They're also bringing in Jackson Richardson, one of the better freshmen in this year's class, who should make a big impact. So you got 7 guys right there. They always internally develop some players that we don't even really see coming, and then they just end up playing a big role and being a really, really good team as they've been the past couple seasons. So I'm expecting Alabama to be towards the top of the SEC yet again. All right, up next, Virginia. Got Virginia at the 13 hole where we're at right now. So Virginia is going to get a lot of hype this offseason, as they should. They were a 3 seed last year, had a really, really good season. I will say, I think they overperformed a little bit last season. Like, I know they got beat in the second round to a Tennessee. I think they were really good. Look, they won 30 games last year. They were a really, really good team. I think it was just a little bit of an overperformance, maybe just with being in the ACC right now. And it was a really, really good, this is a credit to them, a really, really good coaching job. So that's why might be a little bit lower on them than some. They might be a preseason top 10 team. I'm not quite all the way there yet. They have a ton of players returning. Chance Mallory, Sam Lewis, Testa Ritter. Grunlow is also back for another year. They do lose Jakari White. They lose Ugana Onyenso, which I think is more important than a lot of people think. They lose Dallin Hall, Malik Thomas, and Devin Tillis. So they're losing. I know they're returning a pretty good core with Grunlow, DeRitter, Mallory, Sam Lewis. But I don't know. Maybe it was just because I was a little bit lower on them last year. Like, they were good, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. Something about this team just doesn't seem like sexy, I guess. Like, I don't know if there's like a ton of upside on this team. The floor is going to be really high just with the returning pieces. I don't know what eventual ceiling could be for this team, I guess would be the best way to put it. But it's a good team. It's just not like it's going to be really good, but I wouldn't recommend betting like Virginia to win the national championship. I know I'm talking bad about a team I have ranked 13th in the preseason. Like they're going to be really, really good. I'll be shocked if they're outside of the top three in the ACC, top 3 or 4. But we'll see. Optimistic, great stuff for Ryan Odom in year one. I would expect him to continue to have success. Alrighty, up next, I got Gonzaga at 14. This is also a little bit lower than some might have. Their projected starting lineup looks like this. It's Mario Saint-Superi is back for another season. Isaiah Harwell transfers in from Houston. Really curious to see how that one works out. Davis Fogel will round out the backcourt. Braden Huff is going to be back from his injury starting next season. He is expected to be the star of this team. We'll see just how far Braden Huff can carry them. And Masamba Diop, really, really good get. He was a freshman at Arizona State last year. Really, really good shot blocker. They're losing a lot. However, I like the pieces they've replaced it with. Seen some people have them ranked like top 10. I can't get all the way there. They're going to be in year one in the Pac-12. It's going to look different with Gonzaga not playing in the WCC, but it's going to be a good roster. It's Gonzaga. It's Mark Few. They're always going to be really, really good. Alrighty, up next at number 15, got Arkansas. These, like I will say from like St. John's, maybe even Texas, number 8, all the way to, I'll cut it off at Louisville next. This seems to just be like, you could kind of put them in any sort of order. I could, at least in terms of the preseason, like obviously we're going to see some teams just not be as good as we thought and be much better than we thought. So any of these teams, like if you wanted to put Arkansas at like in the top 10, I would be perfectly okay with that because they've got some pieces. I love their backcourt with Jeremiah Wilkinson, Jordan Smith Jr., who is the number 2 recruit in the country, just behind Tyron Stokes, and then Billy Richmond is back for another season. Cooper Bowser also transfers in. Abdou Toure is another really, really highly thought of freshman. So it's Arkansas under John Calipari. They're going to get a ton of talent. They won the SEC tournament last season. They've done really, really well under Calipari. There's no reason to think they're not going to do well. It's quite a bit of turnover, losing Darius Acuff, who was their everything last year. Maybe we'll see if this is a little bit more of a by committee team because Jordan Smith Jr., the freshman that is coming in, the number 2 recruit in the country, is more like he's good on the offensive end. Don't get me wrong. You don't get to number 2 in the country, but he is a tremendous defender. So very different than Darius Acuff Jr. Darius Acuff was not too great on the defensive end, but is a very good offensive player, obviously. So it's going to be a little bit different here. We'll see if Jeremiah Wilkinson's able to really step up and score a ton of points this year. But yeah, it should be a little bit of a different looking Arkansas team than last year. All right, up next, I got Louisville. So Louisville obviously spent a ton of money, and I'm not quite sure what to do with Louisville. I'm curious to see where they're at in AP poll because I could see this team being like a top 10 team. Their starting lineup is really, really good. Obviously, they spent a ton on this roster. Jackson Shelstad, the transfer from Oregon. Adrian Woolley is back for another year. Carter Knox going from Arkansas to Louisville. Alvaro Fogueras, who made the huge shot against Florida last year for Iowa to lead Iowa's run all the way to the Elite Eight. And then Flory Badunga, who was, I think he got like $5 or $6 million. It might even be more than that. So very, very expensive roster. However, they spent a ton of money on these starters, and the bench looks a little bleak to me, in my opinion. And to me, a lot of things kind of have to work out. Like Jackson Shelstad really, really showed signs a couple years ago. Obviously, he dealt with some injuries last year, just wasn't able to really showcase his talents just with a bad Oregon team last year. Adrian Woolley was kind of an afterthought last year on this Louisville team. Louisville was good. They won one game, only made it to the round of 32. Carter Knox was supposed to really pop off net last year. Didn't really make that huge jump. A lot of that might just be how awesome Darius Acuff Jr. was. Fulgaris, I'm going to be honest, I'm not huge on this Fulgaris ad whatsoever. I don't know. Like he's a fine player, but he like Ben McCollum, who I trust pretty much just about as much as anyone in the country, didn't play him much in the NCAA tournament. I know he hit that big shot, but late in the year, he didn't really play him much. That says a little something. Flory Badunga obviously raises your floor like crazy because he is such a great defender. However, spending to me, there's a reason that Kansas just kind of let him walk. So there's a little bit concerns just with everyone. I think it's a good starting lineup. The depth's a little bit questionable, so that's why I got them at 16 instead of like as a top 10 team. Like I said, 16, still really good. Like I like all of these players. Jackson Shelstad can shoot it, as can Woolley. Carter Knox, great scorer. Fulgaris can shoot it. Flory Badunga raises your floor like crazy. Like you can look positive at it. I'm just going to be a little bit lower on Louisville into going into this next season as this past one. Alrighty, let's move on and talk about Miami, Florida, who is putting together a really, really good roster. Caden Lewis transfers in from Villanova. He's going to be awesome. They also retain Shelton Henderson, which is awesome. Dante Allen will be in the starting lineup. Caleb Gaskins, and then Samto Cyril. So kind of a big three of Caden Lewis, Shelton Henderson, and Samto Cyril for this Miami, Florida team next year. Deshaun Goody also transfers in from where was he at last year? Robert Morris. So I like the pieces of this team. I'm not quite sure just how high the upside is going to be on this team, but it's going to be a fun team nonetheless next year under Jai Lucas. We'll see if they play a little harder ACC schedule this year, but yeah, should be yet another good team. All right, as you can see, I'm trying to get through these ones a little bit quicker because we're kind of just in the good teams, but not expected to be awesome. Which Florida 2 years ago was supposed to be a good team, not an awesome team, and they won the national championship. So probably should talk more about them, but just for content purposes, we'll keep these ones a little bit shorter. At number 18, I got Iowa State. So kind of same thing, like I said, with Kansas, just kind of moving on from Florida and go like, look, you're really great. We're appreciative you had you here. I don't think you're worth that much money. I think Iowa State kind of did the same thing with Milan Momcilovic. Just kind of said, look, you're going to go get a ton of money. Go do it. TJ Otzelberger's like, we're not going to wait to see if you come back from the draft process. If you're getting that much money, we don't have it. We're going to build around with expecting you're not going to come back. And they did. Killian Torrey is going to be a beast next year. Know the name Killian Torrey. He is perfect for a TJ Otzelberger system. He'll take over the reins over for Taman Lipsey. Jamarian Bateman's going to come in, going to be the shooter of this team. So Jamarian Bateman will kind of step into that Milan Momcilovic role. Leon Bond, Trey Singleton, Blake Buchanan is back for another year. They also bring in Jaquan Johnson from Bradley. Taj Manning is there. Some of these other pieces are really going to have to step up. They got a ton of transfers this year, and I trust TJ Otzelberger, but this is going to be, they're a team every year that seems to be ranked like 10 to 25th, and then they end up they're like 15-0 at one point. So we'll see if they do that again. But obviously, really, really good program going right now under TJ Otzelberger. All right, at number 19, I got Kentucky. Kentucky, just kind of like Louisville. It's like I'm not 100% sure what to do with them because they got a bunch of moving pieces. So they did get Milan Momcilovic. That's the big one. Spent a ton of money on him. They also got back Malachi Moreno, which is going to be. I'll eat my own words. I said last year, I don't remember what game it was where Kentucky played. They played someone, and Malachi Moreno just got ate alive. And I'm like, man, this team is not going to work as long as Malachi Moreno is their big man. He got so much better last season. I was completely wrong on that one. Malachi Moreno became a really impactful player. I wonder who it was who they played where. I mean, Moreno just got torched. And then it was like ever since after that game, he was awesome. He's going to be really, really good for a sophomore jump here, along with Momcilovic. Guards will be Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins. Diallo's coming from Washington. Wilkins is coming from Furman. I'm not quite sure who's going to round out the starting lineup. They've got some different options. Cam Williams should be in there somewhere. I would expect him to probably play the 3. Milan Momcilovic maybe stretched out to the 4. I know Kentucky fans are very, very optimistic now, which they weren't until they got Milan Momcilovic. I'm still not completely in on this roster. I'm not completely sure. It's a good roster. Obviously, probably not a great roster for Kentucky standards. I know they swung and missed on a couple pieces, including Tyron Stokes. It's just kind of like Louisville. It's a couple guys that I think have some question marks. Like Zoom Diallo is really, really fat. His name speaks to it. He's Zoom. He's quick. He has the ball in his hands a lot, as does Alex Wilkins. He needs the ball in his hands a lot. But Milan Momcilovic, they're going to have to run a ton of plays for him. And Mark Pope has obviously coached really, really good shooting teams. So this should be a good fit for Momcilovic there. But outside of that, I don't know. It just seems like I'm so curious to see how this team plays this year. Are they going to be a good defensive team? I don't know. Moreno obviously raises that floor a little bit. Cam Williams can shoot it. This is going to be one of the, they didn't have shooting last year. They got shooting this year. They're going to be a good shooting team this year. I'm very confident with that. But I don't know. Justin McBride also comes in from James Madison, Jerome Morton from Washington State. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really curious to see about this Kentucky team. They just, to me, seem like around the 20 range right now. And that's where I got them, but we'll see. All right, let's move on. Talk about UCLA. I got UCLA at number 20. Um, really, really curious to see about this one too. I think I'll talk about it here in a second. All right, so they get Trent Perry back, Eric Daly back, Xavier Booker back. Jalen Petty going to be one of the best transfers in the entire country. I wanted Jalen Petty to stay at Texas Tech so bad because I thought he was going to be kind of taking over for Christian Anderson. He transfers, no shame there. Transfers to UCLA. I think he's going to be awesome. I think Jalen Petty is going to make a huge, huge jump, really make a name for himself this year. And then Filip Jovic, the transfer from Auburn, coming in to kind of be a big man. That's kind of what they need, is just that big, huge body. They also have Eric Freeney. Xavier Booker, to me, was the reason that UCLA wasn't great last season. It's not even just a fault of Xavier Booker. I think it was more just a roster construction thing where they just didn't have a true rim protecting center. Booker played better at the end of the year last year, but I just wish they would have. I mean, Jovic can sort of fill that role, I guess. But I don't know. It looks like a good, not great roster to me, but this is a team that I do see some upside with, at least as long as someone is able to play that 5 position and be a true rim protector, if that makes sense. All righty, let's move on and talk about USC. So you're going to see a lot of people ranking USC like around the top 10, maybe like 10 to 15 range, just because this roster looks awesome. However, they haven't been. Eric Musselman hasn't had a team in a while where it's like, yeah, this is a team that's constantly in the top 10. Yeah, this is a team that's 14th in the country, 12th in the country. He's had a lot of talent, and last year they obviously dealt with a ton of injuries, but he's always kind of a guy who just makes the run in March. Remember, they were the 8 seed the one year and beat Kansas as the 1 seed. So it's like that's kind of just Musselman's style. But I'm really, really curious to see just how great this one works out, if they are able to like jump into the top 10 at some point, because this team's got so much talent. Elijah Arenas is back. He's going to make a huge jump as he just gets healthier and healthier. Rodney Rice is also back, who was playing like an all Big Ten caliber player last year until he got hurt. KJ Lewis, one of my favorite transfers in, one of the best defenders in the entire country. Jacob Kofi and Eric Ryba will be in the front court. I'm not a huge Eric Ryba guy, but we'll see. Some people are, and I've been wrong many, many times before. So we'll see. They've also got some freshmen. They've got a ton of pieces. That starting 5 is really, really good. This is one of my favorite backcourts in the country with Arenas, Rice, and Lewis. I'm just curious to see how good this team will be. Will this be a true competitor? For those who listen to the show, like if you listen to the coaching carousel grades last week, no, I'm a little bit lower on Eric Musselman just as a coach in general than some. So that's probably influencing my rankings a little bit to have them outside the top 20, but they still should be I got them ranked because this roster is really, really good. Good job in roster construction by Musselman there. All right, got Vanderbilt at 22 as we're almost through the top 25. Then I'm basically just going to label the teams all the rest of the way through. Vanderbilt, they bring back Tyler Tanner. Will he be the preseason? Nah. Tommy Houck will be the preseason SEC Player of the Year, but Tyler Tanner will be first team preseason All SEC. Absolutely. He's going to be one of the best point guards in the country. T.O. Barrett also in. Ace Glass, Bangot Dak, and then Burke Buchtenschel transfers from Nebraska to Vanderbilt. So that should be a lot of fun. They also get Sebastian Williams-Adams, who played a big role last year for Auburn. Chandler Bing is back for another year. So they got 7 pieces, in my opinion, that could be really, really good. I like this team. I like Mark Byington's just philosophy in general. I think he's really going to be one of the rising stars if he's not already there, because he's awesome. I think this is a year that Vanderbilt gets to the Sweet 16. I will say I think this team's going to continue to climb. 22 feels a little bit low to me, but the roster isn't quite as good, in my opinion, as someone like Kentucky, UCLA, USC, but I think they're going to climb. I think this team's going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's move on. I don't know how to feel about this one, but I got Indiana at 23. The roster just looks really good to me. I know they were very, very disappointing last year. Marcus Burton transfers from Notre Dame to Indiana. He's going to be an awesome, awesome scorer. Bryce Lindsey also transfers in from, where was Bryce Lindsey? He was at Villanova last year, I believe. Darren Harris transfers in from Duke. So they are going to have shooting with these 3 guys, and they also have size. Last year, they did not have size. They did not have power conference size whatsoever. Now you get Aiden Sherrill from Alabama, who can also somewhat shoot the 3 at times. And then Sama Igatulu, the transfer from SMU, 7'1". They have size. This roster I love this starting 5. They don't have a ton of depth, but I love this starting 5. This team should be fun. Like there's a couple pieces where it's like, yeah, Marcus Burton, he was injured last year. He's going to be great though. I have no doubt about it. Bryce Lindsey can shoot it. Darren Harris has been kind of just was kind of thrown away a little bit at Duke just because I don't know, he was supposed to make a big jump last year, just didn't, but really, really good shooter. We'll see just being in a new system if it works out. I think it will. I like this roster a lot. Alrighty, let's move on and get to two blue blood programs to round out our top 25. I got Kansas at 24. They're going to be heavily reliant on freshmen this year, obviously bringing Tyron Stokes in. He's the number one recruit in the entire country. Tay Kinney is also a highly thought of freshman. I think these two are going to work together beautifully. Cole Rosario, who, for those who listen to the show, I did not like at all last year, but hey, everyone's got room for improvement. He kind of gives me a little bit of Marco Jackson vibes, but we will see. He's obviously, he's a tremendous athlete, and I don't know, just there was a reason he was in the starting lineup last year and then did not play pretty much the rest of the year. He got a couple minutes every once in a while, but wasn't great. I love the addition of Keanu Dawes. I think that's awesome. However, the big concern, I know, like I just said, they weren't willing to pay Floyd Badunga as much as he was asking. However, I do think the big concern is going to be at the center position. Christian Reeves is going to round out the starting lineup. However, he is dealing with some injury right now. So we'll see what he's able to do. Paul Mbaya is also going to be the other kind of big man to step in. I don't love him as like I said, everyone's got room for improvement. I do kind of like the addition of Leroy Blyden Jr. I think he could step in potentially and be in the starting lineup instead of Cole Rosario. They also have Trent Perry, Dennis Parker Jr., the transfer from Radford. So they've got some pieces. I'm curious to see how this one works out. The big thing is going to be Tyron Stokes getting along with Bill Self. Tyron Stokes is he's got some concerns, we'll say, in terms of what people think about his just attitude on the court, and I guess even some off the court. But we'll see how he is able to. You've seen all the memes of like Tyron Stokes is going to drive Bill Self to retirement. I've been seeing that a lot. I don't know about all that. Bill Self wouldn't recruit him unless he didn't think it would work out, but we'll see. I'm optimistic about Kansas next year. I think it could be a team that, I think they're going to end up being better than 24th, where I have them at the start as of now. Then I got North Carolina rounding out the top 25. Not quite sure what to think about this North Carolina team. I like the size that they have. Neil Abdallas was one of the big transfers coming in. I like Neil Abdallas coming in from Virginia Tech. Matt Abel also comes in from NC State. He heavily flirted with the NBA draft process, but he is back. Terrence Brown, Jaron Stevenson, and then I'm not quite sure who's going to round out the starting lineup. They've got a couple pieces. Maximo Adams, maybe. Not 100% sure. The roster, I like the size. I like some of the pieces. I'm just curious to see how it comes all together. Like Abdallas could be awesome. Matt Abel could be awesome. We're all still waiting on a Jaron Stevenson, just huge jump. It hasn't quite happened yet, but we'll see. All right, so now I'm just going to kind of label, as you can see on here, the next five. I got Iowa right behind them. Curious to see how good. We all know how good of a coach Ben McCollum is, but how good will this team be with losing Bennett Sturts? BYU right behind them. They have Rob Wright. They have Colin Chandler. St. Louis, who is returning a ton of pieces from a great team last season that won a game in the NCAA tournament. They do lose Robbie Avila, but they got some pieces. Purdue is one that I will just kind of mention because I know this is the one I'm going to kind of get hate on. I do not like this roster at all, which is so strange. And I don't know, maybe it's not strange just because, Matt Painter does run a very old-fashioned style team. He doesn't buy in deeply to the transfer portal. The big transfer is Caden Pierce from Princeton. Remember Caden Pierce? He was, I believe, the player of the year in the Ivy a couple years ago. But he sat out all of last season and now he's ended up coming to Purdue. So I'm curious to see how that works out with not playing last year. Running out the starting five, Daniel Jacobson is going to be their center. I'm not a huge Daniel Jacobson guy. CJ Cox is back, who should be probably their best guard. Jakari Harris. Then Omar Meyer, who I'm guessing is going to fill out the starting lineup. Like I said, not an Omar Meyer guy. My God, he takes some bad shots. He's got some talent. The shot looks pretty, but I don't know why Matt Painter lets him take so many mid-range jumpers. But they do return like Jack Benner, Raleigh Burgess. So a couple names that you might know. But yeah, I'm not in on this roster. Luke Ertl as well. I don't know. I don't love this roster. I don't see the upside whatsoever. It's always going to be a somewhat high floor just because Matt Painter is such a good coach. And I wouldn't be surprised if at like some point this team's in the top 15 or something. I don't know. I'm just not real optimistic at all. Then I got Texas A&M right behind them, just rounding out the top 30. And I'll pull up another graphic just labeling out 31 through 45. Texas Tech going to be in a little bit of a rebuild. We'll see if the 5-for-5 passes and JT Toppin's able to play this year. I was optimistic that he might be back for at some point this year, maybe going into conference play, but it doesn't sound like it. Creighton in year one under Alan Huss to me has put together a pretty good roster. Missouri has also put together a quite a pretty good roster with Jason Crow coming in, the 5-star freshman. Nebraska, they've lost a couple pieces, but they should still be pretty good. TCU, same thing. You lose David Punch, but Xavier Edmonds is going to be awesome this year. Auburn, we'll see what Stephen Pearl can do with this roster. I think it's a pretty decent roster. Villanova, whose floor, maybe we should be giving Villanova a little bit more respect just with Kevin Willard doing such a good job there last year. Sticking in the Big East, Providence in year one under Brian Hodgson made some noise early in the transfer portal, but we'll see just how good this team can be. It looks like a tournament team to me. I think Georgia's going to be good again this year. I was so low on Georgia last year, and they were pretty good. You know, they ended up an 8 seed, got drilled by St. Louis, but I think they're going to be good again this year. Ohio State, I'm not. For those who know, I live in Columbus, Ohio, so I am an Ohio State fan. So maybe this is a little bit of reverse bias, but I don't love the roster for this upcoming year. Don't love the coaching situation there either. So I got them a little bit lower than you might find. This Ohio State might be a team that's like ranked in the preseason. I don't think they're going to be that great though. Wisconsin right behind them. Wisconsin probably going to be a team that I underrate yet again, and they end up being a 5 seed and then lose to a 12 seed as they seem to do every single year. West Virginia has done a sneaky good job under Ross Hodge. VCU in year 2 under Phil Martelli Jr. Cincinnati, I'm just so optimistic about Jared Calhoun there. I think he's going to do great things. Then Florida State, who had a really good close to the season last year, I think should be, kind of in the conversation this year in the ACC as team in terms of teams that should make a jump towards being on the bubble or maybe even the right side of the bubble this year. All righty. Spent a little bit more time talking than I thought I was going to do. I thought it was going to be a quicker episode, but I wanted to give love to some of these rosters so you kind of know some of the players that transferred that you might not have even known, some of these starting lineups might look like. I'll obviously be diving much deeper into every team once we get to our preview season in terms of, we're going to do every conference, ACC, just in alphabetical order. We'll go like ACC, Big 12, Big East, Big 10, SEC, and then we'll always do a mid-major ones to talk about some of the best mid-majors to kind of watch out for. We might even do a Pac-12 one this year because Pac-12 is back. So we'll do all of that. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe button before heading out. Follow us on Instagram at Bracket Science with 2 S's, where the fun ranking graphic will be posted here shortly tonight. And then be sure to check out our website, bracketscience.org. Check out CBB Analytics. Sign up with code SCIENCE. I'll talk to you in probably 2 weeks. Might do some NBA draft content to just kind of plug away this offseason. And then I think once like August hits, maybe even July, it'll start really being preview season. We'll start talking about next year, everything to know for next year. So be sure to come back for that. Everyone, enjoy this summer. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Take care.